Hello everybody. Yesterday we saw Scream 6, the sixth film in the Scream franchise and the second one made by the duo behind Ready or Not. So Aiden, what do you think, or what's the plot of Scream 6?
Well, Scream 6 is a Scream movie. Someone has taken up the mantle of Ghostface and is trying to kill people, specifically our main characters, Wednesday Addams and her sister, and the miscellaneous people who are also there. And this one takes place in New York, the Big Apple. Scream takes Manhattan. And there's twists and turns and meta commentary about the reception of the first Scream reboot movie. Connor, what'd you think of Scream 6?
Thought it was alright. Kind of like the first Scream reboot, remake, whatever, sequel. It was okay. It was a little better than Scream 5, but only marginally. Calling this, the marketing kind of makes this Scream Takes Manhattan. There's even explicit reference with one of the characters watching Jason Takes Manhattan in the film.
Yep.
And it doesn't really take that concept
No.
and
Doesn't
run
do
with
anything
it.
with it.
Again, much like Jason Takes Manhattan, would be more accurate to call it Ghostface Takes Toronto apartment buildings. Because I would be surprised if this was actually filmed in Manhattan, for one, but also most of it is just apartment buildings. Like, it could have just as well been recorded, it just as well could have taken place in the original town, Woodsboro, and not have affected the plot in any way. So the marketing of him on like a subway train and stuff, aside from one scene on a subway, is mostly deceptive. And if you think it's going to redeem the slasher movie takes Manhattan genre of two films, this and Jason Takes Manhattan, you'll be gravely disappointed. In terms of kills and content, the kills are okay. The twist is a little obvious to an extent. And I don't know. It's fine. I actually don't have a lot to say. The only returning character is Courtney Cox, who has a lot of close-ups.
Too.
Oh yeah, and the girl from Scream 4. I forgot about that. There are two Scream alums that return to grace the screen. Courtney Cox.
Eric Roberts' daughter didn't come back.
Courtney Cox, plastered in plastic surgery, was kind of funny, especially with the amounts of grotesque close-ups. The plastic surgery's a lot, my lady.
She's starting to look like the Ghostface mask.
She does kind of look like the Ghostface mask. She's pale, white. Her face is
completely
sculpted to be mouth agape. She looks like Ghostface. So that is from a cinematography standpoint, perhaps it was smart to do all the close-ups. And that adds to the meta nature of...
I don't get why she had a jacked black boyfriend in one scene.
She did have a jacked black boyfriend in one scene.
After her husband died in the last movie.
Everybody has a jacked random boyfriend that does nothing in the movie. That's something that every character has in common.
Pretty much.
Except for the lesbian girl who has a lesbian girlfriend.
Yeah.
Besides that, everybody is dating a massive jacked man. Which is just an interesting observation, I suppose. our characters just like jacked hunks. Anyways, yeah, I don't see what everybody's praising about this movie. I've heard people say that it was better than the original or on par. It's generic. It's not bad. It's marginally better than the fifth one, but it's generic. It's not as good as Ready or Not, their previous film, before they went on to do the Scream franchise. I don't really mind them helming the Scream franchise. There is some cringe with the whole meta narration. Like, these people are just so ass hurt about the reception of The Last Jedi. Or perhaps they just feel like in 2023 that's still relevant film discourse.
Yeah, then complain about letterbox users.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a little... It's moderately cringe at times, but it's mostly fine.
It's just the one character that always does it.
It's the one character that adopts... You have this character, which is the lesbian lady,
who constantly narrates the commentary the movie's trying to make.
Yeah.
Awkwardly.
She's the entire meta aspect of it. Rather than making the plot an entire meta narrative like the first Scream did, you now have one character who is the meta, I guess, audience surrogate.
The meta wizard.
The intelligence Reddit karma wizard.
No, Reddit are the bad guys in this one. She's
Yeah.
the intelligent...
No, she just hates other Redditors.
Perhaps.
Like, that's like when a Reddit user says all Reddit users are dumb. And then just, yeah, it would be like if you're fucking Fedora tipping Reddit, your average Fedora tipping Redditor out whose only self-esteem is based on the blood life that they get from Reddit karma. If that person was a character and was the entire meta narrative, because otherwise, once she's kind of written out of the movie halfway through, there's a disappointing lack of deaths in this movie, but when she's written out of the plot, then is it meta at all? Or is it just... I mean, there's some like, oh wow, you didn't suspect we were the killers. Even though, yeah.
Yeah, no. I narrowed it down pretty heavily.
It was okay. So Aiden, what did you think of Scream 6?
It's a good slasher movie, but not a very good Scream movie. Yeah. I think it opens really strong, like the cold open with the kid from the bully from Spider-Man is good, and then also that scene with the shotgun in the store, which you missed most of going to the bathroom, but there was like a whole trailer that just showed that whole scene. I think like the action and horror scenes are good, but there's just no parody aspect here or commentary, which is the same problem that the last one had, where horror is basically just a dead genre that doesn't exist anymore, and the only thing we get are A24 quote-unquote horror movies that are just like 90-minute dramas about periods that have a cartoon monster at some point for like 5 seconds.
Well, we also have Blumhouse, which is trashy 90-minute dramas about how periods become monsters. A24 is just Blumhouse with class. And Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yep.
I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, horror is more or less a dead genre. I mean, you don't even really get generic horror anymore. It's all just the elevated horror crap.
Which would be interesting to parody in the Scream somehow, if they could.
This movie is not interested in doing that in the slightest. So really all that these last two movies could do, the last one just went off the rails and started complaining about online discourse about movies and The Last Jedi. and this one just complains that people complained about the last movie, and it just feels kind of lame. There's no commentary to make on horror movies because there's no horror movies, so all they can comment on is their own movies and the reception of those movies, and it feels really awkward and petty and
Well,
annoying.
they also have a scene where they talk about their favorite entries in slasher movies, and for some reason they said Friday the 13th 2 was their favorite.
Yeah,
Whose
there's some
opinion is
strange-
that? The final girl in Friday the 13th 2, you might say is the best protagonist of Friday the 13th, but come on. Really? I don't know. Bullshit. Bullshit.
It's just, I don't know.
Friday 4 is the 4 or 6.
Scream has nothing to comment on anymore. So as long as they keep making these, they're just gonna turn into self-referential fuckfests. Because Hayden Panettiere from Scream 4 is back doing not much. She's the worst red herring in the movie. There's quite a few bad red herrings in this movie. And then the end of the movie is just references to the previous movie. And it all just feels like this tired cycle of Scream has just devolved into referencing itself because it's the only horror franchise that still exists. Yeah, there's nothing to say. I think like the action kills are good. It's just everything else around them is kind of lame and dumb and misses the point of what Scream was. And if this had just been a more straightforward slasher, it probably would have been better, because I think the slasher parts of it are okay. So yeah, it's another mixed bag for the year. Connor, would you recommend Scream 6?
It's a hard question to answer. I gave it a score that's decent. I guess I'd recommend it if you're like a slasher fan. Not because of the meta aspect, but just because you're probably starved for slasher content. But otherwise, I wouldn't really go out of my way to see it if you're not a big fan of the genre. Or the subgenre, I should say. It's another okay, probably drop of water in the slasher bucket. I don't think it's going to leave the impact early critics and audiences are assuming it will.
Yeah, I don't know where that shit's coming from.
I don't know either.
Oh.
Perhaps people starved for more slashers, but then the Halloween movies weren't always the most well liked, the new sequels, besides the first one. And the last Scream didn't really make an impact. So, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't overly impressed by it. Aiden, would you recommend it, the movie, Scream 6?
I mean, slasher fans are starved. You're gonna know if you want to see it. As for people not into that genre, it's okay enough. Kind of like Operation Fortune. It's kind of middling. I like that movie. It kind of falls in a range of like, yeah, it's technically fine enough that I would soft recommend it, but also I wouldn't go running out to see it. Yeah. Also, we saw 1/3 of 65 starring Adam Driver.
Yes, we did.
Connor, what is the plot of the first third of 65?
I don't know if we have to be so formal, but from what we saw, Adam Driver has a sick child, and he's on a space mission and ends up in prehistoric times, and then he finds a little girl in prehistoric times, and they wander around the wilderness.
With dinosaurs.
With dinosaurs around.
With dinosaurs.
And the dinosaurs look like shit. Aiden, what did you think of what we saw? Why did we walk out of 65?
65's opening is really rough. I've seen a few Letterboxd reviews saying it eventually gets better, although to the extent that people say like it's a 1-star movie that turns into like a 3-star movie. think everyone was just tired and over it after Scream 6. But yeah, the opening of 65 is really rough. It's Adam Driver wandering around the woods, and there's occasionally CGI dinosaurs that don't have feathers, which is ridiculous because this does take place on Earth. I feel like maybe they should have held the Earth thing as a twist for some points, but I guess it is what it is anyway. Connor, do you have any thoughts to say before we say that we already said we walked out of this? So if you have anything to say about 65, I guess now's the time.
I got bored and was on the verge of going to sleep, and I was like, I've had enough of this day, so we left. And I probably won't be back to watch 65. It looked immensely boring.
Thanks,
and
Sony.
I couldn't watch another hour of it. So, thanks, Sony.